Okay, there we go. Let's see if we can have a chat now. There you are, sir. Mr. Kusmierczyk. Good to meet you.
Oh, good afternoon.
Afternoon.
Really nice to meet you all. Thank you so much for this invitation, and really excited to have a nice conversation today.
Well, listen, I'm telling my background's Ukrainian, you're Polish. So
That's right.
if you
Yes,
can spell my name, I can spell yours.
that's good. Have you? I'm just curious. Have you ever had a chance to visit Ukraine?
Twice. And
Oh,
so
twice.
my heart's in great grief, right? I was in Dnipropetrovsk, and I
Okay.
was in Korostin just outside of Chernobyl, and I was in Kiev. In those days they called it Kiev, and now they call it Kiev.
Okay. And when was that? Just
That was in the
curious.
90s, just after they got their freedom.
Okay.
And so I went to help people who had never been allowed to talk about their faith plant churches across Ukraine.
Okay. Oh,
And
wow.
so, yeah, I wound up teaching Ephesians and church growth, believe it or not. And it was an
Okay.
amazing thing. But listen, this is not about me, it's about you.
No, it's great. No, I was just curious, and I had a chance to travel to Ukraine actually on two occasions. I was in Lviv and Kiev probably around 50, I'd say 15 years ago or so, and just a beautiful country, incredible history,
Yeah.
amazing culture, and then got a chance to actually go as a Rotary scholar to a place called Uzhgorod, which is near the Carpathian region.
Yep.
And that was a cool experience because that Rotary district, the official languages of that Rotary district actually has it's Ukrainian, it's Polish, and it's German as well too. And so it was neat to see that interaction and the peoples of those three countries working so closely together. It was actually really neat to see. But this was about 15, 20 years ago, if I'm not
So
mistaken.
actually, yeah, I got to see it when it had just been freed and there was no infrastructure, and I got to see it 2 years later when they had created gas stations and a decent airport and a sign that worked, and they took
Yeah.
down the signs that had false advertising on them and so on. It was a
Oh,
big
wonderful.
change. Yeah, it was a big change. Now, of course, I'm in great grief because I don't know what's going to happen. We don't know
Of
what.
course.
Yeah.
Of
So
course.
let's start with you now because this is an
Right.
interview and I have a
And
hard
I just wanted
stop.
to say, am I pronouncing it right? Tennille, is that correct?
Yes, if you've ever heard the band Captain and Tennille, that is what I am named after.
Oh, wonderful. I just wanted to double check. Really nice to meet you, and I do appreciate the invitation.
Oh, thank you for responding. I honestly didn't think I was going to get a response. So when I did, I was very happy to eagerly call Pastor Dave and be like, he said yes.
So listen, I've always called you Eric, and I see it's Irek.
Well, actually, so actually, my mom and dad call me Irek in Polish, but you know what? Ever since our family came to Canada in 1983, I go by Eric. That was always what folks called me, and so yeah, so either
Dobrze,
one of
dobrze.
those is perfectly fine. Yeah.
I know a little Polish anyway. So let's go to work here. So I'll just give you some. We did a little research on you, and I'm delighted that you're an advocate for special needs. I have a special needs daughter. My daughter has myotonic dystrophy,
Hmm.
and she sometimes needs a wheelchair. She has a power chair. We've had to get a vehicle that would be able to transport that around and so on. And so I saw the advertisement for what would happen in December with you, rather, I saw this ad with you and a special needs young girl,
Mhm.
and I immediately thought of my daughter. So let me thank you for your work on that. That's a delightful.
Well, you know what? The thank goes to. So we actually passed the first ever historic Canada Disability Benefit, which, if you've been following along, it's the first time the federal government has offered a benefit uh, to uh, to Canadians with disabilities that are working age,
Yep.
18 to 65, and this really has the potential to lift so many persons with disabilities out of poverty
Yep.
and really make a difference. And so it's about the way that it's tracking now. It's about a $2,500 payment per year. It augments what the provinces provide in terms of ODSP and other benefits. But this is historic, and it truly is. The credit goes to the amazing community of advocates, incredible grassroots mobilization
Yep.
that helped to push this through and this really led this movement. And so, the kudos truly is to the people on the ground that have been pushing and calling for this, the countless visits to Parliament Hill, the advocacy days. And this is just the beginning. There's real debates and discussions now about uh, the amounts and about eligibility, which are important discussions to have. But it should not take away from the fact that the law is now passed. The Canada Disability is the law. Disability benefit is the law of the land. And this is going to help a lot of people out.
I suspect that listen, I'm heavily involved in Special Olympics locally. My daughter is involved in that, and as well as the Miracle League baseball group.
Oh, fantastic.
I suspect we have friends in common. That's what I would
Oh
say.
gosh, Bill Cal and all the folks there that were involved in the Miracle Park in on Tecumseh Road there in Riverside. What an
Well, that's
amazing
new.
transformation that was. That was
Yeah.
one of the most, I was on city council when we actually made that decision to change the plan from a housing plan to the Miracle Park, and all kudos to all the folks that were involved, especially Riverside Minor Baseball, that really led the way on that. And what an incredible transformation that was for the neighborhood. It was the absolute right decision. I always say it was the best decision on council I've ever made. I'm so proud of it. And I got a chance to be there for opening day, and
Now,
just to
listen,
see the
it'll make you
smiles
cry.
there on the faces,
Now, listen.
and not just the smiles on the kids, but the smiles on the parents'
Oh
faces. It
no,
was
listen. The
amazing.
first I moved to the area from Alberta. I came into and I went to the Ambersburg one. And when we found out about
Mm,
this, my daughter was in a class with a special needs girl,
mm,
and the girl invited my daughter to come to that. And I saw
amazing.
all these people who were there to create a fragrance of love and accomplishment.
I like the way you put that. Yep.
Well, that's what it was. And I sat there and I wept. I cried. It was so beautiful.
Yeah.
And all those people came from all these different backgrounds, and all of it. And look, and there was this instant recognition. I'll tell you this: if you have a special needs son or daughter, you know what it costs, you know what you have to do, you
That's right.
know how much sacrifice is involved. My wife hasn't been able to work, for example, and she has to make sure that my daughter's always on time to get things done and has to, hours and hours. And everybody there looked at each other and nodded. We all understood. It was this moment of, we get it. We could be friends now.
Well, I think that's it. You know what? It helps build that community, right? And when you're a parent, and you get a chance to look across the baseball diamond and connect with another parent that deals with the ups and downs and the challenges, what a difference that can make.
Yeah.
And again, truly, I give so much credit to the folks on the ground that have advocated, that have pushed, that have called for this. And we've set the target of establishing and creating a barrier-free Canada.
Yeah.
And truly, it's something that is not just, it's an onus not just on government, but it's an onus on all of us, to make sure that we live in communities that are barrier-free.
Yep.
And it's important, and it's absolutely important. And that means barrier-free means everything from physical barriers, let's say, in terms of parks, in terms of public transit, sidewalks, things like that, how we get around. But it could also mean, barriers can mean access to employment,
Yes, exactly.
and access to services. And so, I'm so glad that you raised this, because it is something that I'm very passionate. I feel very deeply about. But I just wanted to underline that truly what's remarkable is just the community of advocates that continue to push to build this barrier-free Canada that really is our goal.
Well, let me show you something. So I wrote a book on healing prayer,
Oh,
and
okay.
the book includes stories of instant healing, stories of the pathway to a remedy, stories of bearing with suffering. And one of the things we did in the book was to put a picture of my daughter walking the dog in a
Ah,
wheelchair
beautiful,
going down the road.
beautiful,
Okay? And
amazing,
so this is a book that
amazing.
deals with the miraculous, the ordinary, the in between, the pathway to a remedy, the bearing with suffering, and the crossing over from death to life. And so most of the healing prayer books out there just deal with one of those aspects. But I do believe that it's necessary to embrace the fact that everyone deserves love, everyone deserves kindness,
Absolutely.
everyone deserves a chance. So this is a bridge. So I wanted to get into the meat of what we'd like to talk to you about. I know Tennille gave you some coaching and some ideas. So Tennille, you want to ask the first question? We wrote up some questions, and I think it's appropriate for you to ask it because you generated the question of Irek before the interview started.
Yeah, absolutely. So Eric, I just wanted to ask you, so you were called into going into government. So how did that affect you? How did God call you into working in the government to make change in our area?
Yeah, well, you know, they always say God works in mysterious ways, and just a little bit of background for me. I studied journalism as my undergraduate studies, and I always saw myself as being a journalist, a reporter, someone that will cover the news and cover politics. Something about my family as well too. Our family came to Canada as political refugees. My father was actually in the Solidarity movement in Poland, fighting for the rights of workers against a very brutal totalitarian regime, the communist regime that was there. And of course, you know how especially religious organizations and people of faith were persecuted under communist dictatorships. And so my father was electrical engineer, worked in a factory of about 7,000 people that were building ball bearings in a town in southeast Poland, a little town of 40,000 people, but they had this big factory there. And I'll never forget, in the middle of the night, the secret police and the military, the police there came knocking on my door just after, or our door just after midnight, and arrested my father in the middle of the night and took him away. And we didn't know whether he was alive or dead for 2 weeks. It was only 2 weeks later that we found out that he was being detained. And after his release, the country, the military police and the government declared martial law on December 13th, I should say,
That's
1981.
1989 or 88, something like that.
1981,
Yeah.
1981, yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
And so after he was released again, he was dubbed an enemy of the state. Our family were harassed, and in all intents and purposes, we were given the boot, and Canada gave us safe harbor. And so that's the story of sort of my family, and again, so we always talked about politics. We always talked about current affairs, what's happening in the community and the country around our kitchen table. It's just something that was part of what we were. I mean, I still remember going to rallies with my dad in Toronto in front of the Polish embassy to protest, the treatment of workers and people in that country. And I still remember going to when Pope John Paul came to Hamtramck just outside Detroit in the 1980s. And I remember going to that outdoor mass and holding a banner that talked about solidarity and protecting workers and people and rights. And so that was something that always sort of propelled me. It was part of who I am, part of my identity. But I always thought I was going to write about politics. I thought I was going to cover politics. I didn't think I was going to be a part of it. And so I ended up getting my doctorate in political science, thinking that I might even teach about politics. And then there was an opportunity to run for local politics in Windsor. Somebody had stepped down on council. And you know what? I just heard you just sort of hear the bell, and you just decide to answer it. And that's how my path in politics began, is really hearing the call to enter politics at the local level, the municipal level. And what I felt is the need to not just write about politics and not just teach politics, but to actually impact the decisions that are being made, that impact our community and also impact the country. And so that was sort of how I entered into it. And a lot of people of faith sometimes are skeptical about entering politics and entering government. But I have to say that it is something that when I take a pause and I look around and the decisions that we make, it absolutely influences my thinking, what drives me, and the decisions that I make as a member of Parliament. And so, and you look around the House of Commons, 338 members of Parliament. Many of them come from different walks of life. Many of them come from different faiths, and it is always to me astonishing in a good way when you see just how much common ground there is, and how much their faith influences their decisions. And so there absolutely is room and a place for people of faith in the House of Commons, and I highly encourage them to begin on that journey, to begin on that pilgrimage.
Listen, I want to tell you something. So I wound up standing next to John Paul when he was doing a mass in Edmonton.
Mm.
I was one of the 6 Protestant clergy on the ground
Wow.
there, and it was because I was friends with a Catholic charismatic priest
Oh, amazing.
who prayed with me, and then he arranged for the Archbishop to invite me to come to this event. So it's an inspired. Now, of course, you know this, in Poland, faith and politics are really intertwined.
Yes.
And the Catholic Church was the foundation upon which John Paul was able to stare down the Nazis, first of all, and then after that, he was able to stare down the communist authorities. And you know this, there were priests
Yes.
martyred and people killed. And yeah, if you had your dad taken away in the night, you know exactly what I'm talking about.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, when you know, in our church in Windsor, the Holy Trinity Church, I mean, we have photos in the church basement of Maximilian Kolbe, who is a Saint Maximilian Kolbe, who basically put down his life in order to protect Jewish prisoners in Auschwitz.
Yes.
And so that is something that obviously, again, it's part of my identity, and it's part of who I am as a member of Parliament. I'm very proud of that. And again, there is absolutely a space for people of faith in the House of Commons and in Canadian politics, without a doubt.
Well, let me ask this question because I'm sure this happens. I know this. I have been members of various political parties throughout my life, and I have discovered that no matter which one I joined, eventually I disagreed with something of what they said. And it had to do with a faith principle. Oh, I can't do that because the Bible says, and
Yes.
whatever the issue that they happen to be. Have you found yourself in that position? And what did you do about it?
I mean, let me tell you so obviously I'm a member of the Liberal Party.
Yep.
And let me tell you, first of all, what drives me there, and the alignment that I see with my beliefs. First and foremost, it's focus on, the vulnerable members of our community. And
Well, listen, right there, you're completely in harmony with the gospel. Yes.
and
The
exactly.
Lord sides with the poor. There's no
Yep,
question.
that's right. And working together to lift the poor, and those that are struggling in our community, those that are marginalized, minorities, those that are often persecuted, and that struggle. And I feel that there is a great alignment. And so, from an economic perspective, for example, and so when it comes time to vote, for example, for the National School Food Program, right? That's going to lift hundreds of thousands of children out of poverty. It's going to help them get that good start, being able to go to school not on an empty stomach. To me, that's an easy decision to make. Especially in a community like mine, where I know that in some neighborhoods we have 1 out of 3 children that are in poverty. You have a high rate of poverty in working class towns like mine in Windsor, Essex. The Canada Child Benefit was absolutely transformational in reducing poverty, in childhood poverty in this country. I mean, we saw it. It was almost it was almost a 1-to-1 correlation when the Canada Child Benefit was introduced in 2015 by our government, and then you saw that drop of childhood poverty over the next 10 years.
Listen,
But
I understand the things that are completely in harmony with the gospel.
but I also no for sure. But I also wanted to say for sure. But I also wanted to say when it comes to, for example, the environment, we often don't talk about the environment in moral terms. But when you listen to, for example, I pay very close attention to the teachings of Pope John Paul, and also Pope Francis as well too on the environment. And the issue of climate change, the issue of climate change is a moral one. It's not just one that's economic. It's not just one that's related to health. It's not just a scientifically driven issue where we talk about how do we reduce emissions and how do we get the temperature down and whatnot. But it's couched in moral terms.
Well, listen, it's easy to say we're
Yeah,
stewards of creation. God has
yes,
committed us to care for the planet. So these are issues where you're in harmony with the Bible. What do you do when when the group that you're in says we want to do this, and you know it's outside the framework of what God would have us do? When you're now I know this with me.
for sure.
I know that I pick the party that is closest to where I am, and I exercise my vote there. But you're in the
And
party, and sometimes there's this party ranks thing that happens, and there's politicking that happens. It's
no, for
everything.
sure. And I think I think it's rare where you have an individual that has 100% alignment with any political party on every decision.
Yes.
I think that's very rare. I think you look at oftentimes you have to look at where do you think you can do the most good? And for me, it's where do I think I can do the most good for the most number of fellow residents and neighbors and citizens. That's why I feel very comfortable being in as a Liberal member of Parliament, and very proud of that. Challenging issues, obviously, which is medical assistance in dying, is an issue that obviously, speaking
Now,
with
yeah.
Catholics,
Yes.
for example, and
Yes.
other folks you hear from other communities of faith, they're struggling with that issue. And my personal, my position on that is that I do believe that it is such a personal decision. I do believe that it is such a difficult and sensitive and personal decision that I do believe that it is up to the person, because we are a country of many different faiths and many different beliefs and backgrounds. And I do believe that it is up to the person to make that difficult decision. And oftentimes they people make that decision with, for example, counsel of their family, their friends, their pastors, in conversation with God. But it is a deeply, deeply personal decision, and that is something that I do absolutely respect. But there are conversations that are hard conversations that you have,
So,
again, especially with faith communities. But
I've
that's
got,
how I
yeah.
but that's how I explore in that particular issue.
I don't want to go into political territory. What I want to do is to talk to you as Christ follower to Christ follower about how you navigate the issues of the day. And what you're saying, and what I'm hearing loud and clear, is there is lots of room for things that are completely in harmony with the clear teaching of the Bible to be able to
Yes.
make a contribution in that way.
Mhm.
And of course, I'm celebrating the fact that you're helping people who are handicapped or disabilitied, something like this. The question, and I guess I went for the hard edge because every politician has to deal with what do I do when I am in a conflict of interest or a
Mm.
conflict of conviction around the ideals or the mores of my dominant party, and you're never going to find one that fits. You're never going to do that. And so I just wanted to hear what you're saying as a fellow Christ follower.
Well,
Anyways,
I know if I can just add to that in terms of what my process is that I have deep conversations with family. I have conversations with friends and people in the community, and then also with faith communities. But I also have conversations with other MPs that belong to faith communities that come from Catholic MPs, and others, Protestant and whatnot. And we have those conversations, and then at the end of the day, you pray. I mean, it's sort of a lot of times it's an undervalued sort of resource that we have,
yes.
is just prayer. And these days, oftentimes it's called
A
Uh,
moment of silence. Yeah.
a moment of silence, for example, or meditation, or something along those lines. But we call it prayer, and it's powerful. And so that's I think the process that you go through is truly that process. And at the end of the day, you hope to get to a position where you feel it is authentic, you feel that it is genuine, and I think that's what's important. But I don't want to, I don't want to discount, and I absolutely want to emphasize how important it's just simply saying a prayer is, and having that conversation is important.
Well, that's a major. If you
Absolutely. I'm going to cut in for 2 seconds here. I just want to say that was a huge amen moment to hear somebody who has the power to say, to be a voice for Windsor, to say, absolutely, I take a minute to pray about it. That's huge. That's massive. You don't hear that in conversations um, anywhere on the news where it says, like, yeah, look, I'm humble. I get on my knees and I ask God to intervene and work with me, lead me. That's amazing.
now
Well,
you're
I
coming
think
out of the
I
fires of persecution in
well
Poland.
for sure, Tennille, and I would just say, I've had the incredible privilege of being able to step into places of worship that are, for example, a gurdwara, which is where the Sikh community gathers, or a mandir, where the Hindu community gathers, walking into a temple where the Jewish community gathers, or a mosque, obviously, where the Muslim community gathers. And it's incredible. A couple things that you see is communities in prayer, and communities that humble themselves, right? That this deep appreciation that there is something bigger than yourself. And I think that's a lesson, that I've learned, obviously, in our family, is that there are things that are bigger than yourself. It's sort of that motto, in Rotary, they call it service above self. But I think we could use a little bit of more of that in the House of Commons and in our politics, rather than being so brash and thinking we have all the answers. A little bit of humility.
So I'm sure you're trying to figure out what's going to happen with the political environment currently, and you're seeking the Lord about, should I run, should I not run? Am I? How do you know when you've got the tap on the shoulder that God has given you the guidance? So you talked about the nudge or something. I call it the tap on the shoulder, where suddenly you become aware this is something that you've been assigned. It's not just you having a good idea. The hand of the Lord is involved in this. How do you know you're going to have to make this decision shortly? How do you know the Lord's in this?
it
What's
it comes clear as a bell. You do, you feel it. You have to be open to it. But that was my experience. Is you just heard it clear as a bell. And um, again, so, when I look at how my career trajectory that I had all planned out, and things that I was interested in writing about politics and teaching politics, and at a certain point, you just hear it, and you realize that God has a different plan,
yeah.
and then you try to do your best, but you have to be sort of open to it. And I'll tell you a story. When I was 17, I went on a Catholic pilgrimage
Okay.
across Poland. So I'll never forget it. There was a priest that came from Poland to our home. We hosted him for dinner, and he asked me. He said, "Have you ever been on a pilgrimage before?" And I said, "Pilgrimage? What is that? I've never heard of that." He says, "Well, a pilgrimage is sort of an ancient tradition. Many different faiths have it. It's basically where you go on a long walk."
They
And
talk about
Saint Paul and others went on walks and spread the mission, and he said, "Would you like to join me?" And I said, "Sure." And I'll never forget. So the pilgrimage that I was on is the longest one in Poland. It was 700 kilometers is what we walked, which was about 50 kilometers per day. And we walked from the very Baltic coast all the way to the south of Poland, to the holiest shrine in Poland, which is the shrine dedicated to Mary. And And I'll never forget being in Foot Locker or a shoe store, and the gentleman that was selling me the pair of shoes, he says, "Hey, what are you going to use these for?" And I said, "I'm going to go on a 700-kilometer walk." And he says, "What the heck are you doing that for?" But anyway, ended up going on this pilgrimage. There was about 200 people in my group. Every year, there's about 200,000 Poles that participate in the pilgrimage. And it was this incredible journey over 18 days. We literally walked through forests, through hills, highways. We walked through villages. And when you enter into a village at the end of a 50-kilometer walk, the villagers will actually take you into their homes. And oftentimes these villagers, they were very poor. They had thatched roofs. They still drew water out of a well, but they put on this incredible spread for you, an incredible supper, because there's a saying in Poland, when a guest is in the house, God is in the house. And so you had a chance to walk with folks from different walks of life, different backgrounds, some of them younger, some of them older. And you had a chance to really connect with people on this walk. And then you had a chance to connect with the villagers that took you in and have these conversations. And you just realize that, no matter your background, no matter your lot in life, we're all searching for the same thing. We're searching for depth. We're searching for connection. And it's a connection not just with ourselves, but it's a deeper connection with God and faith. And so that pilgrimage, that walk that I was on, had this incredibly deep impact on my life and the way that I carry myself. And I'll tell you one final story, because I know you're running out of time, but really
Oh, yes.
quickly, at the end of the march, right before you walk into the town of Częstochowa, which is where the Holy Shrine is, before you walk in on your final day, there's a hill just outside Częstochowa, and it's called the Hill of Forgiveness. And you walk up that hill with the pilgrims that you just walked 700 kilometers with. And by the way, you never called people by their name, you called them brother and sister. And you walk up this hill and you turn towards each other, and you literally turn towards an individual and you say, "Brother or sister, for all the sins that I have committed against you ever, I ask for your forgiveness. I'm sorry, and I ask for you to forgive me." And it is an incredibly powerful moment, where you turn to your brother and sister and you ask for forgiveness. And I think in our lives, and especially today, and maybe in today's society, it's okay for us to ask for forgiveness. It's okay to realize that we are sinners, we make mistakes, and it's okay to turn to your neighbor and to say, "I'm sorry." And I think maybe we've discounted or forgotten a little bit about the power of that. And I think it brings people closer together because it makes us more real. We're not angels here. All of us make mistakes. There are things that we've done we're not proud of. That's who we are. And it's important to recognize that it's part of just living a genuine life, I think. And I think it's important as a faith community and as people of faith to rediscover that, the ability to ask for forgiveness. I think it's such an important part of our faith.
Well, that's a beautiful wrap up. Actually, the center of the Christian gospel is the cross, as you're well aware. If you're a good Polish Catholic, you know that. The center of the journey is that the forgiveness of God is extended to all of us, and He commands us to return what we have received by being at peace with each other.
Sure.
That is what it means to be a believer.
That's
So,
right.
so listen, let me thank you for giving this time to us. It's been a delightful conversation. And I'm delighted that you actually are not afraid to talk about God. But we're going to publish this. I hope you're aware that we'll be
100%.
publishing this. And if that's with your permission, I would simply, well, we might take a few chunks here or there, and we're probably going to post the whole thing on our social media feed. The intention is that we are trying to equip people in spiritual disciplines, and living inside the sphere of a political reality requires the practice of spiritual disciplines. And you're saying you are actually a person of prayer while you are an MP. That's a remarkable thing. So let me thank you for your time and for your service, and in particular for your work with the weaker portions of our culture and society. And I am included in that with my daughter. And I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for the work that you've done with that.
Well, thank you again, once again, Pastor, and thank you so much to Neil for organizing this. And I think this is an important conversation and I'm so glad that you're taking this on as part of your mission. I think this is absolutely important.
Well, thank you, and the Lord bless you.